Okay, everybody. Sorry for that late start, but this is not my normal gig. So normally I do a late night show. As you can tell by the sleepy bags under my eyes, it is not normal for me to wake up this early, but I really love J. Edgar, so I agreed to substitute for him. But tomorrow, you guys are going to have Stephen Ignoramus hosting, who is a much better host than I am, and will take care of this in short order. However, I do have some interesting stories that I found for you guys last night and this morning, and so I think that we should just go ahead and get into them. The first one comes to us from ABC News. The vaccine hesitant are in a death lottery, says the West Virginia governor. What he's talking about is 18 to 24-year-olds who are among the largest group of people who are not getting the vaccine. Um, and this unfortunately means that they have to ramp up a terror campaign to make you believe that you're going to now win the vaccine, win the COVID lottery, which means that, you're going to get it. You're going to win it, you guys, if you don't get the vaccine. But let's go ahead and read some of this story here. As the country marks the 245th Independence Day, wow, congratulations to us. The Biden administration has officially missed its target of getting 70% of all adults at least one shot of the COVID vaccine. And as state governments examine what went wrong, nothing went wrong, guys. Every adult who wants the vaccine has the vaccine. So at this point, you're just kind of yelling into the wind. And that's why you need a scare campaign. Let's read further. Um, Read about as the state governments examine what went wrong with their vaccine rollout programs, a culprit is clear. The younger population is significantly less likely to be vaccinated, also significantly less likely to die from the vaccine or from the COVID. Sorry, it's early. They're significantly less likely to die from COVID, which probably explains why they don't want to get the vaccine, which can also be risky for them. At the end of the day, the young people, this is a quote, at the end of the day, the young people were having a hard time getting them across the finish line and getting them vaccinated, West Virginia Governor Jim Justice told ABC This Week co-anchor Martha Raddatz. They're young people all across this country and they're not getting vaccinated. The shock and horror of young people who are not in danger from COVID not getting the vaccine. You guys really thought this out, didn't you? It's a challenge. That's all there is to it. Sure is. Man, the youth of this country rarely makes me proud. They're kind of making me proud right now. Nationally, 67% of adults have received one dose, but only 56.1% of adults in West Virginia have received one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. A surprise from a state that was lauded months ago as being one of the leaders in vaccine distribution. Yeah, just because you're sending them the vaccines doesn't mean they're going to use them. Have you guys been to West Virginia? Have you met the people of West Virginia? Yeah, you guys weren't going to win this one. When the statistic is broken down by age, the article continues, the vaccination rate plummets in younger generations. While more than 78% of the U.S. population over the age of 65 is vaccinated in the United States, according to the Centers for Disease Control. Only 39.5 of 18 to 24-year-olds are fully vaccinated from COVID vaccine. That makes sense. People who are over 65 actually do have a risk of having complications from or even dying from COVID, whereas people who are in the 18 to 24-year-old camp just aren't that risk group. They're not, and to be honest, as many side effects as they have from this vaccine, I can't imagine being an 18 to 24-year-old and considering even getting this vaccine, considering the complications. I'm 38 years old and I had a whole long conversation with my doctor about it. He was like, if you don't want it, you don't need it. So, at this point, anybody who's pressuring me to get the vaccine, and I'm old, who's pressuring me to get the vaccine, I'm like, dude, are you my doctor? Because you are basically going against my doctor's advice. You're going against my doctor's medical advice. So, oh, we have some people in the chat. Hi guys, thanks for coming. Challenge 1984, good morning to you as well. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk to the people in the chat or not, but I'm gonna anyway. Because it's my show today, you guys. Alright, so let's move on to our second story. Oh, real quick thing. I didn't get all of the vaccine story. Let's go back real quick. So Radit says, let's go back to who's not getting vaccinated. The statistics will show that it's poverty and race. You just look at the map, and it's a lot of red states. I mean, wow, okay. I mean, well, there's some truth to that, Justice responded, because a lot of red states probably have a lot of people. And I'm reading this direct quote. I'm not stumbling over my words. This is the direct quote. Well, I mean, there's some truth to that and everything, Justice responded, because, the red states probably have a lot of people that, are very, very conservative in their thinking. And they think, well, I don't have to do that. But they're not thinking right. I love that they actually put this quote as is with all the ums and knows intact. Because accusing people of not getting the vaccination simply because they're conservative is something that I can't imagine a serious adult could say without completely stumbling over their words. Hey, Quest. Yeah, my doctor is cool. Challenge said that my doctor sounded cool, and yeah, he's cool. He's a really cool dude. I was really surprised when he told me that, but I was like, okay, I feel like you're telling me the truth. And anyway, let's read more of the article. I'm sure if J. Edgar's listening to this, it's driving him crazy that I'm mangling his show, but I'm doing my best, guy. So to quote from the article, do you really think those people who aren't vaccinated, who, as you said, are more conservative, may not want anybody in their business, are really going to get vaccinated? Raditz asked. What could actually put them over the edge to want to at this point? Well, Martha, I hate to say this, I don't think you do. Well, Martha, I hate to say this, is what would put them over the edge is an awful lot of people die. The only way that's going to happen is a catastrophe none of us want. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but I think that that's something to pay attention to. The government really wants everyone to get this vaccine. And people are just not getting it. The adults who want it have it, and everybody else is pretty much like, no, I don't need it. And what they're saying, and what this person is saying is, I don't want to say it, but what it's going to take is a lot of people dying. I don't know. I just think that's something to pay attention to, you guys. Let's continue. So we're going to keep trying, he added. Keep trying what? Jessica wondered. In the capital of West Virginia, the local Kewanna-Charleston Health Department is only vaccinating 8 to 10 people a day, according to Dr. Sherry Young, a health officer and executive director of the health department. On their best day earlier this year, they administered 5,344 shots. Quote, do you think that this is the last little trickle out there, which is pretty sizable, will ever do it? Probably not, Young replied. According to a new ABC poll, 74% of people who are unvaccinated will probably get the shot, which is up from 55% in April. While reporting in West Virginia, ABC News came across dozens of individuals under the age of 35, same difference, who were still unvaccinated. William Patterson, 22, of Morgantown, West Virginia. What's up, William? Shout out. Told Raditz that he would probably not get the vaccine because he felt he wasn't at risk. What an astute young man. Do you worry you might give it to someone else? Raditz asked Patterson. A lot of people in my family that are health risks are already vaccinated, so I'm not really worried about it right now. That's my boy, William Patterson. You are killing it out there with your ABC News interview. The state of West Virginia has continued to try to incentivize people to get vaccinated, offering multiple lotteries, $1 million cash prize, custom outfitted trucks. Damn, a truck. Jesse's rethinking this. Full 4-year scholarships to any public institution in the state, lifetime hunting and fishing licenses. Wow. You know who they're going after with outfitted pickup trucks and lifetime hunting and fishing licenses. Custom hunting rifles and shotguns. Oh my God, it gets worse. and getaways to West Virginia state parks. Oh, guys, you're falling flat with that one. State parks are nice and everything like that, but I can pay $10 for parking for the year for a state park. It's not really an incentive. When asked if the vaccine lottery swayed his decision to get vaccinated, Patterson said it doesn't change anything really. I love William Patterson. 22-year-old William Patterson from Morgantown, West Virginia. You're my boy. When quote from the article, Justice told ABC News that people are gambling with their lives, which you do every time you step out of your front door, Jesse added. When it boils right down to it, they're in a lottery to themselves. We have a lottery, that basically says if you're vaccinated, we're going to give you stuff. Well, you're in a lottery. You're in another lottery going on, he added, and it's a death lottery. Well, let's look at lottery statistics. What are the chances you're going to win the lottery? Probably slim to none. Same goes true for the West Virginia governor's quote unquote death lottery. My God. Quote from the article, I was going to say earlier that it's the old, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Raddatz said to the governor. You've provided the vaccine, and yet, quote, maybe what you've got to do is lead them to water. And if they won't drink, you've just got to some way stand there and push their head down in some way. At least a few will drink. Wow. Guys, let me read that quote to you one more time. Justice responded to the you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink by saying, quote, maybe what you've got to do is lead them to water. And if they don't want to drink, you've just got to some way stand up and push their head down some way. At least a few will drink. You might drown the horse that you're forcing their head down into the water. But cool. Thanks. That sounds even more fun than being in a death lottery, which I probably wouldn't win. I can't believe that, you guys. I really can't believe I just read that out loud. Some young adults are gradually visiting their local pharmacies, though. Allie Kirk, 20, got vaccinated the day ABC News spoke with her. Allie, you're not my girl. I appreciate you getting your vaccine and everything, but I think you got it just because ABC News was there. A lot of my friends are getting it, Kirk told Raddatz. Oh, that's a good reason, too, because all of your friends are doing it. Quote, my parents were vaccinated. I felt a lot more comfortable with it. I did some research on my own, and I felt it was time for me to get it. I was ready. I'm ready to move past COVID and get on with a normal life, get back to my normal life. Let me tell you, I live in Georgia. A lot of people here were not getting the vaccine. They've gone back to their normal lives months ago. And, I don't live in a large county, but I live next to the largest county in Georgia. And there's, a few new cases a day and people are not dying. There are like 0 new deaths for weeks now. So I don't know. It's just something to consider. It is a personal choice. And if the West Virginia governor wants to hold your head underwater to force you to get this vaccine, something tells me that they don't have your best interests and your health at heart. They merely have this requirement that the government wants from them. And they're going to do anything that they can, including giving you a souped up truck and a gun so that you'll be willing to go get this vaccine. That warms my heart. There's no more West Virginian lottery that I could possibly think of than them offering to give you a souped up truck and a gun. Fun. So let's move on to our next story. This one's a little more serious, and I'm not going to be able to laugh as much, so I took my enjoyment out of the last story. This story comes to us from the AP. U.S. left an Afghanistan airfield last night, and they didn't even bother to tell the new commander. If that's not the U.S. military for you, I don't know what is. Bagram, Afghanistan. The U.S. left Afghanistan's Bagram airfield after nearly 20 years by shutting off the electricity and slipping away in the night without notifying the base's new Afghan commander. Seems a little bitter. Who discovered the Americans' departure more than 2 hours after they left, military officials said. Afghanistan's army showed off the sprawling airbase Monday, providing a rare first glimpse of what has been the epicenter of America's war to unseat the Taliban and hunt down the al-Qaeda perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks. The U.S. announced Friday that it had completely vacated the biggest airfield in the country in advance of a final withdrawal the Pentagon says will be completed by the end of August. Oh, thank God. We heard some rumor that we heard, and then heard is in, I don't know why. We heard some rumor that the Americans have left Bagram. And finally, by 7 o'clock in the morning, we understood that it was confirmed that they had left Bagram. General Mir Azdullah Kostani, oh, I feel good for pronouncing that, Bagram's new commander, said. The U.S. military spokesman, Colonel Sonny Leggett, did not address the specific complaints of many Afghan soldiers who inherit the abandoned field, including the fact that you left, you didn't tell anybody, and turned off all the lights. That's something you do when you're like moving out of your roommate situation and it's like a bitter dispute. So the lights have your name, like the electric company has your name. So you get the power shut off just to be, a big B. That's what that sounds like to me. So they left and they turned off the power and they didn't tell anybody. The statement said that the handover of many of the bases had been in the process soon after Joe Biden's mid-April announcement that America would be drawing the last of its forces. Leggett said in a statement that they had coordinated their departure with Afghan's leaders, just not all of them, or the electric company. Before the Afghan army could take control of the airfield, about an hour's drive from the Afghan capital of Kabul, it was invaded by a small army of looters who ransacked barrack after barrack and rummaged through giant storage tents before being evicted, according to the Afghan military officials. Wow. With everything they've been saying about, oh, we can't leave Afghanistan in a vulnerable position, and if we pull out, we'll be leaving these people. I don't disagree with that. I think that that's true. But if that were really their concern, you think they would have at least waited until somebody from the Afghan military showed up to take over the base. But instead, they were like, peace out, America's leaving. And then they were gone, leaving this base to looters. That's crazy to me. It just kind of shows you that the things that they say that they're concerned about and the reasons that they want to stay in these countries don't exactly match up with the truth. Because they wouldn't have done that if they were concerned. Or, it's possible they did it on purpose just to be like, ooh, you're going to miss us when you leave, guys. So to quote from the article, at first we thought that they might be Taliban, said Abdul Rauf, a soldier of 10 years. He said that the U.S. called from Kabul airport and said, we're here at the airport in Kabul. Kohistani insisted the Afghan National Security and Defense Forces could hold on to the heavily fortified base despite a string of Taliban wins on the battlefield. The airfield also included a prison with about 5,000 prisoners, many of them allegedly Taliban. Wow, so they left 5,000 prisoners there and then just shut off the lights and left. Awesome, guys. You're doing a great job. The Taliban's latest surge comes as the last U.S. and NATO forces pull out of the country, as last week most NATO soldiers had quietly left. The U.S. soldiers are likely to remain until an agreement to protect Kabul Hamid Karzai International Airport, which is expected to be done by Turkey, is completed. Meanwhile, in northern Afghanistan, district after district has fallen to the Taliban. In just the last 2 days, hundreds of Afghan soldiers fled across the border to Tajikistan rather than fight the insurgents. In battle, it is one step forward and some steps back, says Kohistani. Kohistani and the Afghan military is changing its strategy to focus on strategic districts. He insisted they would take them in the coming days without saying how that would be accomplished. Kohistani does not sound confident. On display on Monday was a massive military facility the size of a small city that has been exclusively used by the U.S. and NATO. The sheer size is extraordinary, with roadways weaving through the barracks past hangar-like buildings. There are 2 runways, over 100 parking spots for fighter jets, known as revetments. I don't know, because of the blast walls that protect each aircraft. Excuse me. One of the 2 runways is 12,000 feet long and was built in 2006. There is a passenger's lounge, a 50-bed hospital, a giant hangar-sized tents filled with supplies. Well, not anymore, such as furniture. Kohestani said the U.S. left behind 3.5 million items, all itemized by the departing U.S. military. They included tens and thousands of bottles of water, energy drinks, and military ready-made meals known as MREs. When you say, quote, when you say 3.5 million items, it is every small item, like every phone, every doorknob, every window, and every window in every barracks, every door in every barracks, he said. The big ticket items left behind include thousands of civilian vehicles. I don't mind so much them leaving behind material for the Afghans who are going to need to like take over these security measures. But, at the same time, if you don't announce that you're leaving, these items are there and open to looters. So it's crazy to me that they just left 3.5 million items, including doorknobs and water bottles and energy drinks, but also big ticket items like vehicles, and then they just left. 2 hours before these guys even figured out that they had to hurry up and get there, and then it's an hour drive from the capital of Kabul. So they really screwed these guys. It does sound like a waste of energy cataloging all that. Someone just said in the Quest just said in the chat that it seems like a waste of energy cataloging all that stuff. That's the military for you. I mean, if they can waste a lot of time and a lot of money doing something completely useless and then screw it all up by leaving it there for looters, it seems like that's their play and that's what they're going to do. So, let's continue reading the article. Afghan soldiers who wandered Monday throughout the base that had once seen as many as 100,000 U.S. troops were deeply critical of how the U.S. left Bagram, leaving in the night without telling Afghan soldiers tasked with patrolling the perimeter. In one night, they lost all the goodwill of 20 years. They had built goodwill? Sorry, let me continue. Within 20 minutes in one night, sorry, I lost my place. In one night, they lost all the goodwill of 20 years by leaving the way that they did, in the night without telling the Afghan soldiers who were outside patrolling the area, said an Afghan soldier, Naim Matullah, who asked that only his one name be used. I don't blame you, dude. There's a reckoning coming, because I don't think that the U.S. has built all that much goodwill in Afghanistan. And yeah, I will be praying for you, sir. Within 20 minutes of the U.S.'s silent departure on Friday, the electricity was shut down and the base was plunged into darkness, said Rauf, one soldier of 10 years, who had also served in Taliban strongholds of Helmand and Kandahar provinces. Am I reading that right? Who had also served in Taliban strongholds. Okay, so maybe there's a lot of switching back and forth between the Afghan soldiers and Taliban dudes. That seems safe. The sudden darkness was like a signal to the looters, he said. They entered from the north, smashing through the first barrier, ransacking buildings, loading everything that was not nailed down into trucks. On Monday, 3 days after the U.S. departure, Afghan soldiers who were still collecting piles of garbage that included empty water bottles, cans, and empty energy drinks. Oh, good. That's what you need. You need a Taliban army hopped up on monsters. That's going to be fun for everybody. Behind by the looters. Kostani, meanwhile, said that nearly 20 years of U.S. and NATO involvement in Afghanistan was appreciated, but now it was time for Afghans to step up. We have to solve our own problems. We have to secure our country and once again build our country with our own hands. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack here. I'm not in the military. I'm not a military person. I'm not an expert on this. So that's like my huge caveat to any of the opinions that I'm about to give is pretty much that they're all dismissible. We've been in Afghanistan for, if you're an 18-year-old soldier, you can now, or you could have fought in Afghanistan, and you weren't even born when the events that occurred that sent us to Afghanistan happened. And so it's a little bit crazy to me that we were in Afghanistan for that long. I don't think that the purposes that we said that we were in Afghanistan, which was like to secure human rights for the Afghan people, to remove the Taliban, all of those things. I don't think that that was entirely the purpose of us being in Afghanistan. I think it's a little bit fishy that when you look at a map of Afghanistan, that the easternmost tip of that country touches China. I don't think it's an accident that we had city-sized bases all over that country that borders with China. Also, this entire plan to get out of Afghanistan started with Trump. And I don't know, this might be bias on my part, but I just don't think Trump would have let it go down in such a way that they were leaving in the middle of the night, turning the lights off, and then letting all of these materials be looted. While I do think the image of these dudes running out with like Monster energy drinks is a little bit funny, it's not really funny for the people who actually have to live there and now have to take over defending their own country, and that we left it in such a way. I mean, we stayed there long past when we should have been there, and then we did exactly the opposite of what we should have done, which is ripped the rug out from underneath these people. So it's actually really sort of depressing that it went down this way. I see a comment in there that says, niceness to Afghanistan soldiers is much more important than when it happens to the civilians. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know that it's necessarily about, being nice to the Afghan soldiers. It's about leaving them in a position where they can, do the job. And yeah, I agree with Ron. We should have never been there, but we were there for 20 years. So to pull out and just like rip the rug out from under people who actually did sort of depend on what we were doing for security measures is a huge dick move. So sorry for saying dicks on your show, Edgar. He's never going to ask me to do this again, you guys. Let's move on to the next story because that one's depressing. Oh, this one's even more cheerful. So there's the headline from AP reads, Elsa's heavy rain won't stop Florida condo search. As you guys are aware, there is a condo called Surfside in Florida that collapsed last week or the week before last. I think it was last week. And they have collapsed it to make it safer for workers to search the building because I guess one half of the building had not yet collapsed. And so they were worried about that. There was a story, I didn't bring up this story today, but I will just kind of like add it in as a piece of human interest. There were people with intact apartments who had left their pets and their belongings in those apartments and had been evacuated. These people petitioned a judge to be able to go up and get their pets out before they collapsed the building. And the judge said no. Like literally these people knew. So all I'm telling you in the future is if a government official is like, and they come with guns to tell you to evacuate the area that you're in, take your pets with you. There's always this insistence that you're going to be able to go back and get your pets once everything calms down. You don't know that for a fact. And this is a really perfect case and point where you left your cat up in your apartment because they said, okay, the building might collapse. We need you to evacuate. You'll be able to go get your cat later. Now these people can't go get their cats. So, it's something to consider. If you're leaving, take your animals with you if at all possible, because there's a really good chance that you're not going to be able to go back. This was a horrible thing that happened like during Katrina, for example. People weren't able to go back to their homes for weeks and weeks, and their animals were basically left there. So let's get into this story and find out what's going to happen. Surfside, Florida, from the AP, ramped up rescue efforts at the collapsed condo building, facing new threats from weather as Tropical Storm Elsa begins lashing Florida on a path that would mostly spare South Florida. Bands of heavy rain were expected in Surfside as Elsa strengthened on Tuesday, possibly becoming a hurricane again before making landfall somewhere between Tampa Bay and Florida's Big Bend, and crossing North Florida. So wow, this is really going to whip Florida pretty hard. The search crews can work through the rain, but lightning from unrelated thunderstorms have forced them to pause at times. And the garage area in the rubble has filled with water. The delays frustrated rescue crews, Miami-Dade County Mayor Danella Levine Cava said, quote, Truly they live to save lives. Sorry, I got messed up there. Truly, they live to save lives. They've pushed ahead no matter what was thrown their way, she said at an evening press conference. Still, crews got a big boost when the unstable remaining portion of the Chamberlain Towers South building came down on Saturday. The demolition prompted by fears that the structure could fall, allowing rescuers into previously inaccessible places, including bedrooms where people were believed to be sleeping at the time of the disaster. So at this point, I guess they're really not looking for survivors any longer. They're just looking for remains, because I can't imagine that collapsing the other half of the building would necessarily help in the search for living people. So it seems like they're just kind of, trying to get the remains out. And, I I know that people don't exactly consider pets on the same par with human lives, so I could understand sacrificing these people's pets if they knew that there was a possibility that there were living people that they were going to try to get out of there. But being the fact that, they're basically looking for remains at this point, it's just really heartbreaking to me that they didn't let that woman go up and get her cat. So I know, I'm kind of being emotional about a cat, but at the same time, that really just upsets me. Anyway, so 4 more victims were discovered, raising the death toll to 28 people. Another 117 people remain unaccounted for. And we're talking about over a week in the Florida heat, filling up with water at this point. I'm thinking that they're not holding out a lot of people, a lot of hope for these people. To quote from the article, the site is busier and more active now than I've seen it since we began. Now that the damaged building is done, Surfside Mayor Charles Burkett said, adding that heavy equipment was now able to freely move around the site. Rescuers hoped to get a clearer picture of voids that may exist in the rubble as they search for anyone still trapped in the fallen wing of the building, but found very few voids. Miami-Dade Assistant Fire Chief Radeh Jadala. Man, I thought after leaving the Afghanistan article that I was going to have an easier time with the names, but I don't. Fire Chief Radeh Jadala told family members late Monday, "No one has been rescued alive since the first hours of the collapse, but rescuers are still holding out hope for reuniting loved ones." That would be wonderful. If there are living people in there, I really do pray that they're able to be rescued. Quoting from the article, "We continue to remain focused on our primary mission, and that is to leave no stone unturned and to find as many people as we can and bring them out and bring help, either some answers to family and loved ones or to bring closure to them." This is from the fire rescue captain Ignatius Carroll. Calvin reported from Tallahassee, Associated Press writers Cody Jackson, and so on and so forth. You don't care about who is reporting. But yeah, that's a really sad situation. There were a lot of conflicting reports when that story first came out. So I had first heard that the building had been evacuated and that it was being purposefully demolished. I had heard all kinds of rumors about it, and it seems now that we've discovered that it was actually full of people when this collapse happened. And I know that there are some people who used to live in and around those buildings who said that water is a constant problem in Florida. If things are not, if water is not channeled around your property properly, there we go, it can really be destructive as far as like the foundation of your buildings go, even to your houses or whatever. So water management is no joke. If you've got water management problems, get them seen to quickly because they do result in catastrophic collapses. So moving on to not a more cheerful story. Lebanon's crisis deepens as lines for fuel and food and medicine are scarce. The World Bank said the financial crisis could rank among the world's 3 worst since the mid-1800s. The currency has lost 90% of its value, and the unemployment rate has skyrocketed. Things in Lebanon are not going well. In the picture, if you're watching the video, you can see that a line just like completely filling up the off-ramp to get to this gas station in Lebanon. This story comes to us by Ben Hubbard, reporting from Beirut, Lebanon. As she sat in her Mini Cooper, inching her way through the long line of cars to get gas, Lynn Husami, 23, tried to use her time well. She had a phone meeting with her advisor for her master's thesis, called old friends, and played video games on her Nintendo Switch. Really setting up that like Lebanon is a totally modernized country We're not talking about Afghanistan. We're not talking about some windswept desert country. This is a fully modernized country, fully modernized city in Beirut, Lebanon. Um, After 4 hours, oh my God, after 4 hours, she recalled that she hadn't reached the station, was drenched in sweat, and needed a bathroom, but she feared losing her place in line if she went searching for one. I'm hopeless, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, she said, summing up the feelings of many Lebanese about the financial collapse that has turned once routine errands into nightmares. So something that I listened to about this woman's story is that this is not something that could not happen in the United States. Her life was pretty much just like our lives until this financial collapse happened, and that's something that they talk about happening a lot in this country. So something to think about. I'm hopeless, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, summing up the feelings of many Lebanese about the financial collapse that has turned once routine errands into nightmares that fill their days and clean out their wallets. It's getting worse and we can't do anything about it. I don't know how we can fix this, she says. Lebanon is suffering through a financial crisis that the World Bank has said could rank among the three worst since the mid 1800s in terms of its effect on living standards. Its currency has lost more than 90% of its value since fall 2019, and unemployment has skyrocketed as businesses have shut down. Imported goods that were once commonplace have become scarce. The double blow of the pandemic and a huge explosion in the Beirut port nearly a year ago that killed about 200 people and heavily damaged the capital has made an already bad situation much worse. The crisis threatens to add a new element of volatility to a country in the Middle East that was once a cultural and financial hub and now hosts at least 1 million refugees from neighboring Syria. Lebanon also forms an active front in the regional struggle for influence between Iran and Israel in the West. Excuse me. Inside Lebanon, the crisis has created a distinct sense that the country is coming undone. As all the wealthiest spend their days sweating through the frequent blackouts, waiting in fuel lines that wrap around blocks, running from pharmacy to pharmacy in search of medicines that have disappeared from the shelves. Oh my gosh, that's the scariest part. The gross domestic product of the small Mediterranean country of about 6 million people has plummeted about 40% to 33 billion last year from 55 billion in 2018, the last full year before the crisis began. The World Bank. Per capita income also fell by the same percentage during that period, leaving more than half the population poor. Oh my gosh. Such severe economic constrictions are usually associated with conflicts and wars, the World Bank said on May 31st. But Lebanon's crisis was caused by extensive deficit spending by the government. It left it deeply in debt and by unstable monetary policies. Gosh, I don't know where we would find a facsimile in our own country for extensive deficit spending by the government, leaving us deeply in debt, and by unstable monetary policies. I don't know where we would find a facsimile like that or a similarity like that in our own country. But here we go. Leaving the banks largely insolvent and the value of currency plunging. Guys, I just don't think that we should look at this story as anything but a canary in a coal mine. I continue. So far, the country's fractious political system has failed to offer more than whack-a-mole solutions to whatever the most immediate crisis appears to be. Raising the prices of subsidized bread, including electricity production, and subsidizing imports of fuel, medicine, grain to the tune of $500 million per month from the central bank's dwindling reserves. Last week, Parliament passed a law to spend $556 million on a ration card program for poor families, although it remains unclear how it will work and how the state will pay for it. The current cabinet resigned nearly a year ago after the Beirut port explosion, but it continues to serve in a caretaker capacity, so they didn't resign, which its members say doesn't give them the authority to make sweeping policy decisions as the country's political parties bicker over the makeup of the new government. Oh my gosh. I honestly, I know, but we could really spend some time talking about how similar the American situation is to this, like just before you get to this point. Anyway, I continue. In announcing the resignation of his cabinet last August, the caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab blamed Lebanon's many problems on a system of corruption, on a quote system of corruption that is only quote deeply rooted in all functions of the state, and can and is so powerful that the state cannot confront it or get rid of it. As the crisis has accelerated, the Lebanese have been forced to adapt in painful ways, climbing stairs because elevators lack power, cutting out meat or skipping meals because food prices have jumped, and wasting large parts of their day just keeping their cars moving. My God. On recent days, Saab al-Din Damasi, 45, had left his car in neutral and was pushing it through a long line outside of a Beirut gas station to preserve as much of his scarce fuel as possible. He had taken a break from his job at a local shoe company to get gas and had been stuck in line so long that he was now late getting back to work. His gray hair and jeans were matted with sweat, and he had stripped down to a white tank top to try to keep cool, but his worries did not end at the pump. His house was only his house has only a few days of electricity from the grid, and he could afford only a few spare hours from a private generator, not enough to make it through the muggy summer nights. Quote, as soon as the air conditioner goes off, the mosquitoes come, and then the heat. Then that left him tired at work, where his monthly salary of 1.2 million Lebanese pounds, oh my gosh, that's a monthly salary, 1.2 million Lebanese pounds. It tells you something about their currency, which had been worth about $800 before the crisis, was now worth less than $80. While talking about the financial pressures on his wife and two teenage children, he got choked up. Oh my gosh, this poor man. If my son asks for something, I can't give it to him. I just can't handle it, he said. Everyone in line had similar woes. A high school teacher who had worked for 41 years to earn a pension that is now almost worthless. A 70-year-old taxi driver who was terrified that his car would need repairs that he couldn't afford. An electrical engineer educated in the Soviet Union who recalled waiting in fuel lines there, was furious that she now had to do so in her own country. Those with foreign passports or marketable skills are rushing to leave the country as fast as they can. Before the crisis, Ahmad al-Awen, man, I really picked these articles today, you guys. This 31-year-old person, Ahmed, had been on a path to comfortable life in Beirut, with a job as a pharmacist at a private hospital and a teaching position at a university. One recent morning, he arrived at near dawn to get gas and was waiting in line for 4 hours, making him late to work. His pharmacy often lacked blood pressure medications and even painkillers and antibiotics. So right there, you already have a burgeoning medical crisis on their hands. If you cannot get people, especially things like insulin, we're headed for a real emergency here in Lebanon, you guys. His pharmacy often lacked blood pressure medications, even painkillers and antibiotics, something that has never happened before. So he accepted a new job in the United Arab Emirates, where his salary would be 10 times as high and he would not have to wait to fill his tank. I have a good job and a position at a university, but as for life, you just can't live here. The currency crash has made it more expensive for traders to import medicines, and subsidy payments from the central bank aimed at keeping medication coming have been delayed, causing shortages. Outside one Beirut pharmacy on a recent afternoon, a mother came by searching in vain for acne medication for one son and prescription eye drops for another. A bank manager failed to find any of the 5 medications his doctor had recommended that his sister take for COVID-19. And the couple said they had been to 9 pharmacies without finding epilepsy medication for his wife and drugs for Parkinson's disease that the man's mother had been taking for decades. And you cannot suddenly just go off medications like that. Those people will be in my prayers. At another pharmacy, Ellie Corey, 48, said he had managed to find only 2 of the 5 drugs that his doctor recommended to treat cluster headaches that were attacking him nightly and keeping him awake. My friend has cluster headaches, and they actually cause a lot of people to kill themselves. That's how painful they are. and this guy can't get his medications for him. So far, he asks only at pharmacies within walking distance. The clothing store he managed, within walking distance of the clothing store he managed because his car was so low on gas. But he worried that he wouldn't find the painkillers before the pharmacies closed for that day. If I don't find them, he said, I'll just have to deal with the pain. This is a terribly sad story, and it's very easy for us to look at stories that go on in places like Lebanon and think, okay, well, that's a faraway country. They're not like us. This couldn't possibly happen here. This absolutely 100% could possibly happen here, especially considering the conditions that caused this being things like, corrupt mismanagement of the monetary policies of that country. We certainly know what it's like to have corrupt officials mismanaging our money. So I recall just during a time where Atlanta had a snowstorm that was so bad that it caused traffic lines in our highways to be blocked up for days. People couldn't get their medications. We had lots of people who died just in that 5-day span from not being able to get access to their medications. Things especially like blood pressure medication and insulin for diabetes and things like that. So I know that a lot of those things can't be kept and stored for a long time. So it's not like you can buy a freezer and just keep tons and tons of insulin. That stuff goes bad pretty quickly. So, it's just something to be aware of, that our system is fragile. And if you can get things that can be stored, like I said, I know that not all medications can, but if you can get things that can be stored up, now's the time to start doing it. I'm not telling you to be a doomsday prepper. I'm not telling you any of those things. I'm just telling you we could have some hard times ahead. And I really think that it would behoove everybody listening to the sound of my voice to just have some extra things for your family, including, if you can afford it, a generator and other types of stuff like that. Medical supplies, just anything you can get your hands on. Okay, moving on. Oh, look, this should be a more amusing story. It's about the ever-increasing level of COVID variants. This one is now called the Lambda variant, raising concerns due to unusual mutations. Vaccines in most Western countries still appear to offer strong protection against the variants. Good, so what they're going to do is they're going to come in here, they're going to scare you about a new variant and then tell you, but don't worry, we've got the vaccines, because this is yet another effort to try to make young people get vaccines who don't need them. But that's just my opinion. Let's read the story. The Lambda variant, which is believed to have been the first detected in Peru about a year ago, is the new concern of scientists who say mutations could potentially be resistant to COVID-19 vaccines. Oh, good. So vaccines might not work. I love how we've changed our attitude from the top of the article, the headline, to the first paragraph of the article, that we're worried that they could actually become resistant to the vaccines and that the vaccine, which could have caused you medical problems, might not actually work to protect you. But let's read the article. The World Health Organization said that the variant mutations could increase its transmissibility and possibly increase its resistance to neutralizing antibodies. The health body called Lambda, or C.37, is a variant of interest. So far, we have seen no indication that the Lambda variant is more aggressive. Jairo Menendez-Rico, a WHO virologist, told DW. This article comes from Fox News, so I'm not entirely sure what DW is, but okay. It is possible that it may exhibit higher infection rates, but we do not have enough reliable data to compare it to Gamma or Delta. He told the German it's a German outlet. He told the German outlet that if SARS-CoV-2 evolves, it may become more transmissible but not deadly. As far as I understand, that is the case with viral mutations, that they will often mutate to be more transmissible but not more deadly, because killing off your hosts too quickly is actually not good for the virus. So each iteration it goes through, it becomes more transmissible, but it's not as deadly to the people that get it. But I know that from a movie, so I'm not entirely sure I'd take my advice on that. Jeff Barrett told the director of COVID-19 Genomics Initiative at Wellcome Sanger Institute in the UK He told the Financial Times that the reason it's this thing is jumping around, that the reason it is challenging to make some sense of the threat from Lambda that the reason it's challenging to make sense of the threat from Lambda using computational and lab data is that it's an unusual set of mutations compared with the other variants. The vaccine used in most Western countries still appears to offer strong protection against the highly contagious Delta variant, first identified in India and is now spreading to more than 90 countries. Interesting. So we're now allowed to identify and talk about what country a virus comes from, because it seemed like that was getting a little dicey over the last couple of months. But okay, who am I to question what they do? Yeah, so again, I really think that there's a big effort to point out, every new day, every stone we overturn, there's going to be some new danger, some new reason that you have to go get this vaccine. Whereas, the people who work together with both the national media and these pharmaceutical companies have a lot of vested interest in making sure that, over 70% of the adult population of the United States gets these vaccinations because they were prepaid by the government to do this. So it's, again, talk to your doctor. I had a really long, almost hour-long conversation with my doctor, which, I really appreciated him for actually taking the time to sit down with me, explain the various risks, explain to me what I was risking by getting the vaccine and by not getting the vaccine. And you, as a personal individual, depending on your age group and your risk circumstances, have to make that decision for yourself. Do not let articles with scary titles tell you what you should do with your health, because that is absolutely the wrong way to go. So moving on. This next story is actually kind of fun. I didn't want to do just depressing stories. And I saw this one and I just had to laugh. The Ukrainian army has decided to make female soldiers march in high heels. Yes, you read that correctly. I read that to you correctly. The Ukrainian army is making their soldiers march in high heels. So I don't know if you guys can see this picture. They're not like stilettos or anything like that. They seem to have a rather thick base on the bottom of the heel. I don't know how many of you have walked in high heels, but these are some pretty sturdy looking heels. We're not talking about, like the little kitten heel points or anything like that. Not that this is something that you should be marching in. Let's read the story. This comes to us from CNN, by the way, which is why it's a ridiculous story, but let's read. Ukraine's Ministry of Defense has defended its decision to train female soldiers to march in high heels, following an outcry from local lawmakers. Women from the Ukrainian armed forces will march in a parade to mark the 30th anniversary of independence from the Soviet Union on August 24th, according to a statement from Army Inform, the Defense Ministry's official news agency, published on Thursday. They have been training twice a day to master the steps and are progressing well. Major Eugene Balabushka told the Army Inform. Balabushka confirmed the plan to wear high heels during the parade. Ivana Mediv, a cadet at the Military Institute of Taras Shevchenko, National University of Kiev, has been training for more than a month. Today is the first time training takes place in high-heeled shoes, she told the Army Inform. It's a little harder than boots, but we try. See that, fellas? It's hard work walking in those high heels, so show some appreciation to your ladies. However, the decision to march in high heels angered a number of lawmakers after local media picked up images published by the Defense Ministry. Elena Kondratyuk, deputy chairman of the Ukrainian parliament, joined members of the parliament from Equal Opportunities is the name of the organization, a cross-party group, to call on Defense Minister Andrei Taran to reevaluate the decision to make female soldiers wear high heels while marching. And Olga Stefanishina, Vice Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine, Marina, oh my God, it's names all the way down. Marina Lesbiana, Marina Lesbiana, Minister of Social Policy, Yulia Laputina, Minister for Veterans Affairs, and Yatkatrina Levchenko, Government Envoy for Gender Policy, signed a joint statement criticizing the decision. Shoes with heels are incompatible with combat capabilities of soldiers. And the Prussian step on the parade in such shoes is a deliberate harm for the health of the soldiers, reads the statement posted in Stefashina's Facebook on Friday. There are 57,000 women serving in the Ukrainian armed forces, according to the Post, and the country is introducing NATO standards, under which the principle of equality rights and obligations of servicemen, regardless of gender, applies unconditionally. In response to the criticism, the Defense Ministry uploaded a series of pictures to Facebook of female soldiers from other armies wearing high heels. Now, you guys, I was late getting on the show, and one of the reasons I was getting late is that I was searching all over the place to find pictures of female soldiers from other militaries wearing these high heels because I thought it would be funny. But Ed came on and told me, hey, are you going to come on start contemporary anytime soon? And I'm like, yeah. So I didn't actually get the opportunity to get these pictures, but I think it would be a hilarious slideshow. I didn't know that this was a thing going on in world militaries, but I think it's hilarious, and I think that they should keep doing it. However, I agree that it does compromise your attack readiness. It's not necessarily an equal rights thing, and you definitely don't want to be like doing Prussian march steps in high heels. However, again, really funny, and I'm always about a good joke, so why not? I'm gonna get canceled for that. In response to the criticism, they uploaded a series of pictures to Facebook of female soldiers from other armies wearing high heels. But Stefashina and the co-signatory, I'm not saying that woman's name right, I'm just going to move on. Stefashina and the co-signatories of her statement pointed out that while other armies of some NATO member countries issue high heels to women as part of their dress uniform, they are not worn in marching parades. Yeah, because they're not as based as the Ukrainian women are. Get over it. The officials called the officials called on the ministry to replace the high heel shoes and appoint a gender advisor and carry out a survey of women in the security and defense sector to find out how they feel about the working conditions in their uniforms. God, can you imagine what kind of troll they're going to appoint to be the gender advisor of the Ukrainian military? Moving on. Following criticisms, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense said on Saturday that they will issue new and improved footwear to female soldiers. Aw, that sucks. They gave into pressure too easily. Defense Minister Tran said that he ordered his deputies to look into new footwear, which will be ergonomic and made in the shortest possible time, which means they will suck. However, it is not clear exactly what the new footwear will be. I really hope they're open-toed wedge shoes. Yeah, so I don't know. I had a couple of depressing stories in a row, and oh, someone said I was based. Thank you. I can't read the names. They're actually really blurry. I'm not going to explain the technical aspects to you, but thank you, person who said I was based. Anyway, there were a lot of really depressing stories in a row. This one made me laugh pretty hard, and I just, wanted to share something that wasn't like a complete downer. Because unfortunately, the next story is kind of a downer. It's about Richard Donner. So this story comes to us. It's more of a human interest story as opposed to like a world event story. But Richard Donner was the director of Lethal Weapon. He was the director of Goonies, the first Superman. He directed Scrooged. I mean, basically every awesome movie that you remember from when you were a kid. Richard Donner was the one who directed it. So really, this dude's like a huge legend in the film industry, and just kind of giving him a sign off because it's my contemporary today. So we're going to read. Los Angeles film director Richard Donner, best known for helming the Lethal Weapon film series, Goonies, and the original Superman, has died at 91 years old. I won't read the whole article. I'll just kind of go through and hit the main points here. Um, 1976, The Omen, starring Gregory Peck. He brought craftsmanship to the first Superman. Free Willy, The Lost Boys, usually with his wife. Oh, that's good that they were like a husband-wife team. The X-Men, X-Men Origins Wolverine, Lethal Weapon, as we mentioned before. Born in Bronx, New York, attended Park Junior College and then New York University, where he majored in business and theater. Donner who began his career on one side of the camera as an actor, soon graduated to television directing, honing his craft, working through the series Wanted Dead or Alive, The Twilight Zone, The Man from UNCLE, and The Fugitive. This guy was in everything. Yeah, like Donner's downer. Yeah, Quest. It's kind of a downer. But when someone passes away at 91, you know, they've like lived a really full human life, and this guy left us with a lot of things to remember his legacy by. And while not everybody remembers the directors of all of these movies, this guy definitely had his hands in making some of the memories that I have from childhood. So I just wanted to take some time and highlight him, let you guys know what his name is and that he passed away. And if you remember the deceased in your prayers, that you might send one up for this guy who really like contributed a lot to the tapestry of our childhoods. So good journey, Richard Donner. We thank you for your service, sir. And so with that, I have one more story to get to. I was worried that because I only had like a handful of stories that it would take only like 20 minutes to read through these and I wouldn't, you know, actually like have a long time on contemporary. But this actually takes a lot more. You guys should really appreciate how much effort J. Edgar puts into doing this show because it takes a lot. And I got to tell you, this just one day of doing it is kind of kicking my ass. So, you know, again, so Richard Donner, we salute you. J. Edgar, we salute you. We appreciate you guys for actually like providing us with content. So we're going to move on to the last story. This is about another hacking that has happened because Lord knows when you pay off hackers, they're going to come back. You give a mouse a cookie, they're going to want a glass of milk. So let's read. Oh, no, lady. We don't need to see you or talk to you. Hold on. Let me stop her. We don't want to get removed for copyright. Okay, so hackers behind holiday crime spree demand $70 million. Say they've locked 1 million devices. Cybersecurity experts say the scale of the Cybersecurity experts say the scale of the attack is unprecedented for criminal hackers. The hacker gang behind an international crime spree that played out over the 4th of July weekend says that it has locked more than 1 million individual devices and is demanding $70 million in Bitcoin. Guys, Bitcoin. Sorry, let me continue. Device and is demanding $70 million in Bitcoin to set them all free in one swoop. The gang, the Russian-connected Revil, really a little on the nose there, guys, is best known for previously having hacked JBS, one of the world's largest meat suppliers, briefly halting its operations across much of North America. But this attack's potential scope is unprecedented, some cybersecurity experts said. So you mean when Biden met with Putin and gave him a list of industries that they weren't allowed to attack, that were vulnerable to cyber attack, but that he wasn't allowed to attack? This pretty much gave them a green light to do whatever else they wanted, because it kind of seems like they're just doing whatever they want. Let's continue reading. Revil began its spree on Friday. I hate that name. That's a stupid name. Revil began its spree on Friday by compromising Kaseya, a software company that helps companies manage basic software updates. Because many of Kaseya's customers are companies that manage internet services for other businesses, the number of victims grew quickly. Instead of locking out an individual organization, as ransomware gangs usually do, Revil locked each victim computer as a standalone target and initially asked for $45,000 to unlock each one. President Joe Biden told reporters Sunday that he has directed the full resources of the government toward investigating the problem, which means that they're not doing anything about it, or can't do anything about it. The Swedish grocery chain Coop is the largest known victim. It closed most of its 800 stores all day Saturday. Its registers were controlled online by Vesma Escom, KS a customer, and were locked up and rendered unusable. My goodness. This just reminds me of like the people in England before it was called England. They're like the Viking attackers would come and they would pay ransoms to these guys so that they would go away. Well, if you're paying the ransom, the next group of Vikings that come looking for ransom is just going to be bigger. So the fact that each cyber attack that happens, their solution is just to pay off the hackers is pretty much guaranteeing there's going to be more hackers. You're creating an incentive. They want money, and you seem to be providing it, so they're just going to keep doing this. Awesome. Great plan, guys. Okay, so continuing from the article, exactly how many systems have been infected is unknown, although the number is likely to be sizable. The cybersecurity firm Huntress, which is helping KS's response, said it was aware of more than 1,000 businesses that have been affected. Revel's claim that it has compromised more than 1 million devices is impossible to prove because few victims are speaking publicly. No one wants to admit this is being done to them. And no government or company has a database of everyone who was hit. But the number is plausible, said Mikoko Hypopen. Can we just get some WASP names? Just one article. I'd like there to be a John Smith. Not because I don't think your names are wonderful and beautiful. It's just I have a really hard time pronouncing all these names. Mikoko Hypopen, a researcher at the cybersecurity company F-Secure, given that this is a strain of ransomware infects each device individually. Think about a retail chain like a grocery store, Hypopen said. Every single cashier system is an endpoint. Every laptop, everybody in sales has a system, multiple servers, 200 stores, 300 stores. They alone would have thousands of endpoints. And if 1,000 Coop-like companies were affected, then yes, we would have 1 million endpoints. Regardless of the actual number of victims, it's extremely difficult to imagine victims banding together to jointly pay $70 million. Joining together to pay $70 million. Alan Liska, an analyst at the cybersecurity firm Recorded Future, said Alan Liska, an analyst at cybersecurity firm Recorded Future. Despite the braggadocio of their note, really? Liska, I'm going to write you a personal email about using the word braggadocio. Despite the braggadocio of their note, I actually think it is actually a sign that they are overwhelmed. Actually, a million victims that each paid $45,000 would yield $45 billion, he noted. They are lowballing themselves at $70 million. Oh, I'm so glad you told them that. Oh, good. Oh, good. Yeah, so this seems to be something really to keep an eye on because, as somebody in the chat, I can't see, Horatius, y'all know I can't pronounce names, said that they keep blaming Russia with no proof. I do think that there is a strain of anti-Russia sentiment in this country where it's really easy to blame them for basically every single problem that goes wrong. You had Rachel Maddow last year in the middle of one of the harshest winters we've ever experienced, telling people, oh yeah, the Russians could just snap their fingers and turn off all of the power and all of the heat to all of these places that are basically underneath feet of snow right now. And it's not necessarily being done because that's something that Russia is planning on doing, has done, or wants to do. It's just something that they do to like drum up anti-Russia sentiment, which is crazy to me that people are so anti-Russia. They basically have the GDP of a large state. As compared with the US, they're really small potatoes. And so the fact that they kind of make them into this bad guy for everything is really crazy to me. But furthermore, these are the same hackers that hacked the meat plant, and they were paid off. Why wouldn't they keep coming back for more? As this article states, they're lowballing themselves right here. They're lowballing themselves at 70 million. I mean, also you got to think about what you can get. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is going to stop anytime soon because why would you? If you knew, it's like feeding stray cats. Like you feel bad for them because they're starving, but if you put out a bowl of food to feed the cats because you're afraid or not because you're afraid that they're starving, the next thing you have is more stray cats. So, I don't know. Just, somebody at some point is just going to have to say, "No, we're not going to pay you." But we're so much more interested in like keeping things running. But like I don't know. I don't really know what it's going to take. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, but it seems like, relying on all of these companies and putting all of your eggs into one basket makes you really vulnerable. And so maybe decentralization amongst these cybersecurity efforts is a really good idea. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't know how it works. I don't know exactly how we should pull out of Afghanistan. I don't know exactly how we should do cybersecurity. What I do seem to know is that what we're doing is not working. So cool. Guys, I really, really appreciate you coming and watching me fumble my way through trying to host Contemporary while J. Edgar is fishing. I don't know what he's doing. I saw something about fish. Tomorrow you're going to have Stephen Ignoramus. He's going to be a much, much better host than I am. So please tune in to Contemporary tomorrow so you can get some actual news from a not idiot. If you want to find me, I am on Twitter at SoupCanarchist. I also have a weekly program on YouTube called The Mad Ones. If you want to come check out me and my partner on that, we get equally stupid on that show. I appreciate you guys so much.